We do have some good news, though.
Oh.
I mean, it's kind of good news. It's actually kind of bad news, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's a door closes and a window opens. We got the story from Timcast.com. White House spins. Department of Education blames random error for document promoting critical race theory this fall. And we also saw Jen Psaki challenged on this. So the original story was that the Biden administration's guidelines for schools reopening this fall is backing a radical group's literature that promotes anti-racism training in public classrooms across the country. Now, we got to break down that word anti-racism because if you are unlearned, you may just assume these code words, these dog whistles, just to mean what it means on the surface. No, anti-racism, according to Ibram X. Kendi, is racial discrimination. Quite literally. You think it's anti-racism, like people aren't going to be racist? No. He wants them to discriminate on the basis of race. What he's saying is that, like, let's put it this way. If racism is negative, is +1, and not being racist is 0, anti-racism is -1.
Yes.
It is a value in mirror image to racism that serves the same function, but for a somewhat different ideology. That being, what he claims is, if we're anti-racist, meaning we actually implement the exact same policies of the past, but we do it, it'll be better this time. And that just, as far as I'm concerned, it's just literally racism. So the good news, I suppose, is that the Biden admin has backtracked after sparking a major backlash on social media regarding critical race theory, blaming a random error for a government guide that promoted a far left group and their agenda. We have this from the Daily Mail. Jen Psaki claims it was an error to promote the group that urges teachers to disrupt whiteness and oppression after Republicans accused the Biden admin of flip-flopping. Now, this is good news. Apparently, the Democrats are starting to get scared of wokeness. There was a story in Axios. We saw the victory of Eric Adams in New York City. They're worried they're going to lose the midterms because get woke, go broke. Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you bring up Eric Adams because he was in New York City. You would think, there were a couple of really woke candidates. Maya Wiley was a big woke candidate in New York City. And you would think, the black Americans and the Hispanic Americans would vote for the woke candidate. They didn't. They voted for the candidate Eric Adams, who promised more police, not less police. He promised public safety. He said, I'm going to make crime my number one issue. I'm going to make education my second biggest issue because the New York public system is so poor. And it's not because of funding. It's not because of what the teachers unions say, which is, we need more resources. Did you know that New York City funds students $28,000 a year. They spend $28,000 a year per student, which is the highest in the nation. So it's not about funding, but Eric Adams, said, "Hey, look, we need to restore the culture of these schools." So they actually voted for, in my opinion, the candidate that represented the least excesses of wokeness. Fortunately,
yeah. And I'm not surprised. I mean, we saw what happened in South Texas. We saw what happened in Miami. Of course, that was likely, Hispanic individuals with experience with communism and Marxism. But the other day, we had Ricardo and Jose Lamas on. And Jose, he's an older gentleman. He actually was in the anti-Fidel Castro underground in Cuba. And he said some scary stuff. Oh. He said that if Black Lives Matter gets real power, they're going to kill people. He said that these people are Marxist. They're enemies from within. They're scary. And I'm like, man, this is a guy who had to flee Cuba because of what happened. Now, that is freaky. The difference between Cuba and the United States, however, is that we got several 100 million people here. Right now, we got 170 or so million active voters. So these are a lot of people that I don't think would allow the as you described it, the excesses of wokeism to become too pervasive. Now, what does it mean to be too pervasive? Well, let's be fair. It's pervasive. It's in institutions. It's in video games. But I think people are starting to recoil from this. That's why Joe Biden, the administration, had to backtrack. They're getting worried. I'm hoping that's the case. I'm hoping they realize they are poisoning their party with this stuff. I hope they're realizing they will lose elections unless they get away from this. But I also have to add, they're never getting my vote back anyway. They crossed the Rubicon, as it were. They went nuts. Like hardcore insane, and now they want to come back and be like, "Oh no, yeah, nice try, dude. I'm not gonna play that game with these people." You look at New York. You look what people wanted. They wanted the ex-cop, Eric Adams, right?
Right. Yeah, and it's funny because during the campaign, if you remember, Biden during the 2020 campaign, Biden was pressured to say defund the police, and he did not say defund the police. And I'm convinced that if he went and crossed that line and he said, yeah, we're going to go defund the police, I'm convinced that, even more Trump voters, even the voters that he supposedly won back from Trump would have stayed with Trump.
It would have been it would be over.
Right. But now, unfortunately, you can see, of course, promises were made, promises were not kept. Biden, is growing old. He's growing senile. He's letting Kamala Harris take over more of his administration.
What promises were not kept?
Well, this idea of Biden saying that he claims to be the unifier, the unifying candidate. I will unify America. Instead, he's pushing divisive race ideology.
It's not even that. He said he basically was talking about the divide in this country and how bad it is. First of all, he launched his campaign on a lie, Charlottesville.
Yep.
The very fine people hoax. He just absolutely rammed that lie on people's throat because he's a scumbag. And now he says, we need to unify, we need to come together. And it's like, dude just went on and gave a speech where he said the Republicans' voting legislation is the greatest threat since the Civil War. You want to talk about bombastic and divisive language? Sure, we can talk about critical race theory. How about the president of the United States coming up and saying the Republican agenda is a bigger threat than the Confederacy? That's what he literally said. Dude's lost his mind.
Yeah. The central banking system's more of a threat. Fiat currency, the $28 trillion in national debt, the runaway inflation.
Well,
he's claiming it's not runaway. It's like kind of like what was his exact words? Any of you guys remember off the top of your head? He was like, "It's okay. It's just inflation. It's going to get back to normal."
He said something like, "This will not increase inflation." He said that I think 3 times in a row because he's super with it, as we all know. But I was like, there's no way that you can look at this and say that inflation is not coming. In fact, Janet Yellen has even said, yeah, we expect some form of inflation.
Look, we can survive inflation. We can make it past our milk costing more money. And that, it sucks. Yeah. I mean, he's got no solutions. He's mocking these business owners. Like I believe he's essentially mocking them. But I'll tell you, we can get through that and we can argue about it. Combine a massive escalation in the cost of food with Joe Biden saying the Republican agenda is the greatest threat since the Civil War. This guy is flicking matches at a powder keg.
We talked about last night with Jose Lamas about the Cuban Revolution, how Castro betrayed the revolution and essentially took it, didn't install their democracy. And I asked him, what could we have done differently? Or what could they have done differently in 1960 that would have prevented it? He said not to be more patient, not to revolt against Batista, because what they thought was Batista was running for election again, and they thought it was going to be rigged. So they were like, they had a preemptive revolution to get this guy out of office before he could. So I could see something like that happening in this country with all this divisiveness, people thinking there's election issues, that people would act impatiently. And I think it's up to us to stay, calm, even if the system seems flawed, that we, remain and work within the system.
You see Joe Biden said the other day as well that he's working to ban any weapon with the ability to take multiple rounds.
Yeah.
Wow.
Huh.
He basically, let's be real, he was not very articulate, but he wanted to say weapons that can take multiple rounds, like 20, 30, 40, 50, 120, you don't need them, and I'm working hard to ban them. And now I know a lot of people on the left are going to try and play this game. I'm sorry, I'm going to walk that back. I know a lot of the establishment Democrats, because leftists actually like guns, are going to play this game where they're like, oh, he didn't mean banning every gun. Oh, he meant this. I don't care what you think he meant, because y'all can't read his mind. He said it.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about a weapon that can take a detachable magazine, then you can have a variety of magazines of sizes. That's what he's talking about. The Democrats have long said they wanted to ban semi-automatic weapons. Why should I believe Biden meant something else?
You have to take him at his word.
I bring that up because one of the other things that Jose mentioned about Cuba was that Fidel Castro came out and said the famous question, guns, for what? And everyone was like, yeah. For what? And then they threw all their guns into a pile, and then the communists took over, and they got to live under a boot for the next several generations. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
it's crazy. I mean, the funny thing is, you go to China, and China, of course, the Communist Party has a huge monopoly over arms and everything like that. And not only do they have a monopoly over arms, they have increased their monopoly to surveillance. And now they can surveil you, for whatever thing. So now they control the arms, they control, your actions. They can control your thoughts, and they can incentivize you based on your thoughts. This is the whole idea of like a social currency. They have a social currency system in China now. And it's like, this is the direction that we are progressing as a country. And people think, oh, it's just guns. It's not a big deal. We just, that kind of thing. That's what progressives think. But you realize that guns is the linchpin. It's the physical linchpin that is able to defend all of the rest of the rights that we hold so dear.
This is what these establishment Dems don't understand, right? These establishment voters, these default libs. They're like, Joe Biden says, you're going to need an F-15 and nukes to go up against the government. That's not true. There's a reason why we don't have, to a certain degree, jackboot Biden thugs kicking doors in and dragging people out by their hair, especially over COVID and lockdowns. But you do see things like that in Australia and New Zealand and Canada and the UK. There's a reason why it's a little better here. It's not perfect. We absolutely do have cops who'll kick your door in and then, arrest you or just shoot you. But the thing is, the fact that so many Americans have guns makes it extremely difficult to violate human rights because you never know if you're going to encounter someone who's going to be able to defend themselves. It equalizes a little bit of the power between the government and the individual so that they have to go through the proper motions. It's not hard for a government to oppress you using bureaucracy. It's actually very easy. However, gun ownership protects you a little bit. And in the long run, if done properly, can protect a nation forever. So long as you don't end up with people saying the stupid question, guns for what? Which is what they're doing over and over and over. What do you need a gun for? What do you need a gun for? And I'm like, none of your business. Who cares? I don't need to give you an answer.
I think the founding fathers kind of put the Second Amendment into place because they expected the government to grow and grow and grow, as governments do. Like they would talk about, we're not a bunch of men governed by angels, we're men governed by men. They understood the shortcomings. They're like, okay, the government's going to grow. We need to kind of put citizens on a slightly more even playing field. And that was unique. Like you didn't see that in Cuba when this is going on. You didn't see that in Mao's China. This is something that we need to pay attention to. This is not something that we can afford to lose.
So I don't want to say this is pessimistic. A lot of people seem to think that when I talk about escalation into conflict, it's pessimism. And I'm like, don't take it to a dark place. It's realism.
Right.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.